All right, sir. It looks like we are live. Just going to check a couple places here. Yes, we are good to go. So welcome, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Tim Watson here with Meet the Master. Today, I am joined by Vic Lampasona. Did I say that right, sir?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Excellent. Down in Florida. Welcome, sir. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, sir.
How we doing down there?
We're good. Yeah. I mean, this is the time of year that unless you're going to be in the water all the time, don't come to Florida. It's 98 degrees, 90% humidity. And you, of course, always have the excitement of hurricanes and all the other tropical storms we get. But we're doing good. Yeah, it's been, interesting with the things going on in the country and sort of Florida's representation of that. So it's been challenging to stay positive for a lot of people. And I think one of the things certainly we do as martial artists, traditional martial artists, is try to inspire that positively and perseverance to get through things like this. So it's been a very different year as for everybody, certainly, for us here in Florida, but we're hanging in there. We're running some live classes and virtual classes with a lot of safety precautions in place.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. We're kind of doing the same model right now where we're doing live classes, but we're also doing Zoom classes twice a week as well. What's your split as far as?
Yeah, so what we did, we've downsized our schedule. And so we used to be 4 days a week. Now we're 3 days a week.
Okay.
And at one point we had multiple rooms. We have a smaller room. So we had some students in one room and sort of a smaller room parallel with another class in the larger dojang. And we've sort of eliminated that to keep social distancing. We've sort of put some things in place, keeping spectators and parents pretty much out of the dojang. And what we decided to do was to run all classes virtually. So every class we have is run basically in parallel with a virtual class. Now, it's a challenge because it's hard to teach to live audience or live students and virtual students, but usually somebody will grab the microphone. And I have to thank Patrick Priest for giving me all of the scoop on how to set all that stuff up, because he was great in the early going with this. He sent me a list of what to buy and I bought it and it sort of worked. So that's what we're using. And it works, I think, for a couple of things. And kind of one of the things that's come out of this is that I have several adult students who travel for their jobs. They're not traveling now, but it is possible. And they've sort of expressed the fact that, well, if we're broadcasting our classes virtually as well as live, when they're out of town, they might be able to, get in their hotel room if they have time and do a class. And the thing I did is, I made the virtual classes count as the same value as the live classes. And I did that early on. And we can talk later about the whole process that we put into place to try to, address the pandemic issues. But, we started with just Zoom classes and then migrated to where we have some in-house classes. So we do them all basically live and broadcast virtually. And we have some students that haven't come in at all live. And then we have, some that sort of mix it up when they can get there. And I think it helps a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it helps as well to try to cater to everyone, because everyone has their, thoughts and willingness to go out or stay in. And we're the same way. We've definitely had some people that stay at home. Some people do a mix of both. We have a student, I think they're in like the Miami area right now, and they're actually training remotely while they're on vacation. So, that is definitely an advantage for some people. So
yeah, I have a student in Texas who's training, virtually, and he's doing something at I think there's no campers there, but he's a Boy Scout and he's doing something at a senior Boy Scout camp where he's doing maintenance on the camp or something. So at night he's in this cabin with his hotspot and is on our adult class, which is kind of cool. So, but yeah, I think it does serve some things. And, I know later on, we can talk maybe about all of the pieces we put in place. Maybe that'll help some people who are listening. I don't want to dominate that. I do want to say something in the beginning though, if I can. And I want to tell you, Tim, and everybody, I'm very humbled to have the opportunity to talk to you guys. This is fantastic. And I truly appreciate everything you're doing with Meet the Masters. They've been some great conversations. I learned a lot about people I thought I knew a lot about, and I learned a tremendous amount about some of the masters I've only seen at Masters Camp on and off. So I think this is a great thing. And I want to thank my students who might be attending this and those who encouraged me to do this interview. They know I love them as brothers and sisters, and I think this is just part of that. So thank you guys very much for encouraging me and Master Watson to sort of select me for this honor. So thank you, sir. I just wanted to sort of get that out of the way before I forgot. Yeah,
it's my pleasure. I'm happy to do it. I talked to Master Hutchinson, and I'm happy to talk to anyone. It's been amazing to connect with people through this avenue of interviews, and we just talked about technology, and obviously this is one of the ways that I've been able to connect with people throughout the world. I got to talk with Master Don Khan from the United Kingdom the other day. I've talked to Master Marco from Sweden, and like you said, I learned stuff. I've had conversations with them for the first time. you know,
exactly.
It's a little different through Zoom, but it's amazing, and it's an opportunity that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise, because you can't just sit down with someone for an hour at Masters Clinic or World Championships and ask them about their life story. So
exactly, and I think that's the thing that's consistently impressed me about our organization, is how forward everybody is and how approachable everybody is, starting from Grandmaster Shin, and I know you were up in the area where you probably interacted with him a lot. We had him as our Region 21 region director for a while when the region was created. So, but yeah, I mean, so approachable, all the Grandmasters, all the Kodanja, just amazing. And that's consistent. And I think that's really different from a lot of the other organizations that are out there. So I think that's great. So yeah, wonderful.
Awesome. Just a reminder, I'm gonna start asking the questions that I have, but if anyone's watching that is interested in learning anything else about Master L, please share. We have some people, Mr. Ormison's checked in, Master Hutchinson says good morning. So we got some people watching along.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. So, sir, I want to get started in going back in the Wayback Machine, and tell us a little bit about how you got started in the martial arts.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So going way back, like the early 70s, I was going to school at St. John's University in Queens, New York. I was born in New Jersey, but that's where I was going to pharmacy school at the time. And, when I went over there, they didn't really have a gym program. It was, you had to find clubs and things. And there were really 3 clubs that interested me. It was fencing, judo, and karate. And so I was always interested in karate, because this is circa 1972. Kung Fu was, sort of talked about. The TV show was going on. Bruce Lee was a hot topic. And I was always, even though I'm the oldest of my 3 other siblings, I'm the smallest. So I was the guy who had to talk my way out of things as opposed to physically manage myself out. So I joined the karate club. And at the time, I don't know if it still is, but the karate club was basically a club that was an intramural competitive club within the New York area. It was the master instructor was Henry Cho, so it was a Taekwondo club, and we trained 1.5 to 2 hours twice a week in a gym. No accoutrements, there were no targets. There was just a gym floor and us, and it was great. It was that old school training. I mean, your bag to practice a sidekick was your partner's shoulder. You were told to tighten your shoulder and put your sidekick up on his shoulder without hurting him too bad. And everybody was trying to knock each other across the gym floor. So then we competed within the different schools that had different types of clubs. And then in the summertime, or even during the school year, you could go into New York City to Henry Cho's dojang, which was then called the Karate Institute. And you could train there 1 day a week. But it was a very different kind of training then, in the sense, and my objectives were different, because I was a 18-year-old guy who was trying to learn all the physical stuff and really didn't get it, sort of the mental stuff. But by the end of my training, which was about 3.5, 4 years, where I didn't achieve any serious rank, it was about middle rank, maybe, I think it was high green belt is what it was in their system. I knew there was something I needed to continue, but then I went on to graduate school and I had a pause. But I did find my old Henry Cho patch, and it sort of looks like this. So this is where I started. I think we were cleaning out my mom's house found that in an envelope with the local instructor. So we had a local instructor who came to the school who was studying Asian studies, and then he was our immediate instructor. And actually, Master Cho came in once a week and taught, usually once every week or once every other week. So it was an experience, and it really set me on a path of something that it changed me so so tremendously, not only physical shape, but just my confidence level went up. My ability to interact with people and to feel confident on places like New York subways. And this was pre-Giuliani, so it was a little dicey in some of the areas in the city. It just felt different. And I always said to myself, I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to get my kids involved when I get married and have children. And so that was my start. And then my education path took me to South Carolina. I was down at the Medical University of South Carolina for 4 years, and then over to Atlanta, where I worked at Emory University Hospital and the university for 20 years. And it was around 1996 is when I re-engaged karate. I mean, particularly World Tung Soo Do Association.
What are some of your memories working with Henry Cho back then? Was he, I hear a lot, so you talked about like the World Tung Soo Do Association and Grandmaster Shin and how approachable and personable they were. And in these interviews, a lot of the other Korean masters, a lot of people did not get that feeling from the warm fuzzy feeling that you got from Grandmaster Shin. How was
Yeah, no, he was there, but we were scared to death of the guy.
Sure.
I mean, and he would walk in and everybody would just go to the back of the, it was like a full court gym, right? A full court gym. And we never filled it because the attrition rate was significant. Students would start sort of on a semester thing and they would be out in 2-3 weeks because of the physical training. But you never spoke to him directly. You always went to a senior student and said, "Sir, am I allowed to do this?" Yeah, it was very different. And I think that's the way it maybe was in a lot of places back in the old days. He basically couldn't understand much of what he said when he barked out his commands, but we figured it out because when we did it wrong, he let us know that. That works. We don't need to go into a lot of detail with that. No. Yeah, it was, it was formative in the sense that I carried that mentality into my training in Tung Soo Do because I had the same reverence for all the scenes. It's sort of like now I think there's a lack of understanding and maybe reverence for, and it's I think a cultural thing on new students come in that don't appreciate, some of the, I don't mean that in a bad way. It may sound that way, but that's not my intent. But there was so much reverence for those masters and senior people that you would never approach them with just run right up to them. I mean, unless you were a little kid. But so he was, I think, very typical. And in the summertime, I would train with other Korean masters in Taekwondo. One time I did a summer in Ishanru in New Jersey because I didn't live in New York. So it was a little effort for me to go from New Jersey into the Karate Institute during a time school wasn't open. So I pretty much trained from the 2 semesters of school. And then in the summertime, I would be back working a job at my parents' house. And then I would go find an instructor and go train there. And I can't remember the names of the folks I trained with, but there were a couple of Korean guys that had opened Taekwondo schools in the early 70s. And, I'd go into their school and they would accept me in there because Master Cho had a high profile. So it was like, oh yeah, you train with him, you can come in here and train with us. But it was all the same. Some of the younger guys were a little more engaged and approachable, but there was always the one guy that everybody was scared to death of who was just sort of there, And so I think that is a different experience. And that is some of that in our association, and certainly I started back at World Tung Soo Do in 1996. So I had a long break,
right?
But just the approachability and the brotherhood and sisterhood is amazing. So, that shaped me in the way I look at senior belts, and it still does to this day.
I think it's super important to have that reverence because I was brought up the same exact way. Obviously a different era, but still that same thought process. My instructor's Master Godwin, and I think of him, with reverence, the same. So 1996, what what brought you back to the martial arts, and how did you end up joining the World Home Judo Association?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, when I finished sort of in 76 or so with the Taekwondo stuff, went off to graduate school, and always in my mind, wanted to finish what I started, so to speak. And so got married, had children, had 2 children, and they were involved in a lot of youth sports. And I think my daughter at the time was maybe 7, my son was 5. And I said to my wife, I said, look, after we're done with this soccer season, I want to get the kids involved in karate. It's great for them. It's going to give them great confidence. It'll improve everything. At that point, what I was saying, but not really not knowing I was saying, was the life skill part was really going to be incredible for them to be successful. So I started looking at a lot of schools, and I interviewed Taekwondo schools, and I was sort of only interested in Korean martial arts schools because that's where I came from and that's where my experience was. Lots of Taekwondo schools around, but there was a Tungsudo school sort of closer to the house, or close to the house. It was, the master instructor was John St. James, Master John St. James, who was a good friend of Master Godwin's, because Master Godwin came down several times, and I actually met him originally through my interactions there. The chief instructor of the school at the time I started was Master Richards, who at the time was a Samdan. And there was another gentleman, Joe Clark, who was, I think, an Edan at the time. And so those guys were at the studio every day, and then Master St. James would come in. So I got my kids involved. And then Master Richards sat down with me, and he goes, you're sitting here watching them. He says, why don't you jump in? And I'm like, yeah, because I told him I had done it before, and I don't know if I have time. I have this hour drive to work and all of that. And eventually he sort of made me a deal I couldn't give up. He says, look, you can train, and this is what it's going to cost you. Your kids are in here. So I started training, and it just was like lighting a fuse, and I haven't turned back since that first day in the dojo. I couldn't tell you the exact day, but sometime in the 1996 range. And trained with my kids, both made it to black belt rank. My son's an Edan, my daughter's a Chodan, and it's just something that's been fantastic. And so that's how I got back involved. Became part of my life, which it is now and will always will be.
How long were you in the Atlanta area until you made the move to Florida?
Yeah, so at the time when I was there, I was working at a university hospital and a university system where I was pretty much doing a lot of different things, but trained as a clinical pharmacologist. So I was working in a lot of things in there, doing some research and things like that. And then in 2003, I left the university to take an opportunity in the corporate world. And that's when I moved to Florida. It sort of also coincided a little bit with when Master St. James left the association. Mm-hmm. So the timing there was, for me, very clear in the sense that, I was going to stay with the association, continue my training in Florida, but it did take me a while to get organized down in Florida as to what I need to do. So 2003, we moved the whole family down to Florida, and then I continued to train. There were no schools down in the Tampa Bay area, which is where we moved. And there was a gentleman from Master Skoda's school, Greg Phillips, who came down and was starting a school. And so I had helped him when he was in a rec center, and I'd go over there a night a week and help teach. And at the time I was at Edan, and so was he. And so we, trained the students he had, and he kept going. Then he left the association, but again, I continued to stay on and just kept training with another school after that opened. And I know you have some questions, so I don't want to sort of preempt what you're going to ask. So
no, listen,
I don't want to ramble too much. Give a break for people to at least, listen.
Not at all. I tell people, if you have a stream of consciousness, go with it. I am not beholden to my questions.
Okay.
So
all right.
A lot of times I'll put questions out there just to kind of prime the pump.
Sure.
So if you're on something, go for it. But while we got a quick break, we got a couple people saying hi. One of your students, Rusty Camacho.
Yes.
He says hello. Good morning. We have Lindsay Dudgeon from the UK. She's watched a couple of. She's one of Master Don Khan's students.
Yes.
Tom Lyons from Region 8 says hi, and Lynn Prifty says hello as well.
Yes, very good. Well, thank you. Good to hear from all of you.
Excellent.
Missed everybody at Masters Camp, so we get to have our vicarious hellos and goodbyes this way, so that's great.
Absolutely. So again, we can, if you want to continue on that train of thought, you feel free to continue.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so, when I came down to Florida, I was in a new job that required me to travel around the country. And at the same time, I was trying to keep my attachment to Tung Soo Do training, World Tung Soo Do, and I was a certified instructor, so I wanted to continue to do that. So I sort of took the mentality that, well, I'll help anybody who's trying to further the art. I was not in a position at the time to open a studio or a club because I wasn't consistently at home on certain dates, so certain days of the week. So my job took me to travel to maybe University of Miami at a certain time. I'd be gone 3 days. I'd come back. It wouldn't be the same every week. I'd go somewhere else. So, it wasn't really something I could do, or I could show up at the appropriate time. So I would go and fit my schedule against those who had studios, World Tung Soo Do studios, and there was only one. And then when that individual left the association, one of his students started a studio. And then so I started helping out at that studio. That studio was Suncoast TSD. And so I started helping out there. An interesting story, my son had stopped at Chodan Bo in Atlanta. My daughter was at Chodan. And so she and I would go and train. And then my son was in high school, I think, and I brought him to a demonstration. And I think this is one of the things I think that's important for people to remember about training in traditional martial arts. There's a lot there that's always there for you. And my son drove with, he was a 9-year-old or 10-year-old Chodan Bo, and he sort of could never get past the next step to sit for the test. He wasn't serious enough, wasn't mature enough. And so he came with me to one of the demonstrations, and on the way home, he says, "Dad, what do I need to do to finish what I started?" And I said, "Well, Nick, it's been like 5 years since you were training, so you need to start as a white belt." And he says to me, "Oh, what do you mean a white belt?" And I said, he goes, "I remember everything." I said, "All right, well, put a white belt on you. Let's have you train. And when because his rank was still in the association, it was elapsed, but he still had a GUP number and all of that. And so he, put a white belt on, much to my wife's chagrin, shouldered the abuse I gave him as my son when I was his instructor. Maybe some of us have been there, but our expectations change a little bit, maybe appropriate or not. And, about 6-9 months, we tested him back into a Chodan Bo rank. And then, he did his time in a Chodan Bo and tested into black belt. So that was one of those things that really brought together because of the continued affiliation with World Tung Soo Do and the attachment and the, closeness of that family. And, he kept on. He went off to college, came back and forth, got to Edon, and really hasn't consistently trained since he's been in graduate school and medical school and stuff. But he's still there, and he still comes to the studio when he's around. It's infrequent now, but it's always great. He was a great instructor too when he was in the instructor ranks. But that was just, sort of part of my trying to, and I tell students, always try to keep a foot in the pond. Like if you have to take a break, come once a month. Come once every month and a half, but keep your foot in the pond because it's always there for you. And eventually, if you're a true martial artist, you'll reignite that fire and you'll get back involved. And I think that's it's something I try to tell the younger students, but not with a lot of success sometimes, but I keep trying anyway.
Listen, being an instructor myself, I wholeheartedly agree with that comment. Today, Master Jason Church posted something. It was a meme that said, I'm so glad I quit the martial arts right before I got my black belt. Said no one ever. And it's one of those things that you have students that quit, and it's like you're so close.
Yeah.
Like like you said, come in, everyone. All right, fine, you can take a break, but just come in once a month. Come in and see us, even if it's just to walk in the door and say hi, because it's just so easy to get out of the habit.
It is. And I have a couple of students that, what I love to see, and I'm sure you feel the same way, is you have a student who trains up to a Dan rank, and then, life gets in the way. They get married, they go get a new job or something, they can't really train. And then, something happens and they come back. And what I love to see is the transition in those students. So when they left, they were really charged up, but then they had to make a decision to leave. Sometimes it was a decision that they just did enough, they met their goal, they want to move on. But then they come back in, and I've had students directly say to me, something's not right with me. I need to get back to training. And I said, all right, come on in and try it for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. Let's see if we can get things right. And then 2 months later, I got it, sir. I know why I need to be here. And to me, that is the payoff for anything that I do, and running, a studio and all of that. To me, that's sort of the essence on why I do it, to watch that personal transition occur at all different people, different kinds of ways, at different amounts of times. I have a student now who just came back after a leave, and it's incredible to see what's happening to that young man as he's continuing to go back and train. And, because there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure in yours, this is a lifelong thing that if you stay with it, the impact, forget the physical impact, but the mental impact is tremendous. And even through this pandemic we're dealing with, the way to shoulder that is to have a martial art type balanced with you, and it puts you in a better position to do that. It's not going to maybe keep you from, maybe it will, but no data certainly on keeping you from getting the disease, but you certainly will be in a different mindset by doing this. And I think that's really important. And I think it's something that as a master instructor, it's why I do it. It's really the part that is really important. And I think that when I see people get it, not the physical stuff, but the other stuff, it really is impactful.
Absolutely. As someone that I started when I was 21, and the confidence it gave me as an adult is something that I'll have with me for the rest of my life. If you'd have told me 20 years ago that I'd be, a teacher, a martial arts instructor at this point, there was no chance.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd make it to Chodan, and certainly not to Edon. And gosh, Samdan, it was a long path for me. I had some things come up in between Edon and Samdan, personal things, physical things, health things and everything. But it still was, and to think about being invited to the master's clinic, that was like, it was amazing. And I would never thought I'd be in this position. But I think, somebody like me, it's evidence of just keep walking the path. And I like to describe martial arts as a journey, as I think we all do. And, if you go on a hike through the woods, there's turns and hills and drop-offs, and sometimes you fall. But, if you keep on the path, you eventually get there. And sometimes what you find is very much different than what you thought it was. It's better. And so that waterfall looks really good when you get there. And hey, there's another one behind that one that's even better. And that's sort of the philosophical approach I take to the training, and try to instill that in the students.
It's funny. Rusty commented a couple minutes ago, keep walking the path, like he always says.
Yeah. We talk about that. And Rusty's one of my senior instructors. So, he passes that on to the students. And, I try to find visualization things, or things that people can relate to. And I've always find that effective. And I'll tell you, in the corporate world, I told somebody recently, I said, when I was in the corporate world, and I wasn't a big dog in the corporate world, but I was at the table in a lot of decisions, a lot of scientific decisions and other things like that. And I dealt with a lot of people with egos. Same thing in the university, chairmen of departments, deans, and things like that. And I used martial arts, Tung Soo Do training every single day in that environment. Now, I didn't kick anybody. I certainly never hit anybody, but the mental toughness and the ability to, listen and present yourself in a way with the right level of confidence, I don't think you get that anywhere else. And I truly think that, for my personal success, it's a huge part of that. It's a huge part of both my kids as well. So, I try to have that message out to everybody, but it is a secret weapon. Chuck Norris in his very first book said, "My Secret of Inner Strength." That was the name of his very first paperback book, written, I don't even know, the 70s or something. And he talks all about how his training in Tung Soo Do in Korea really catapulted him from a poor kid into what he is now. And I sort of took that to heart, and I think it's dead on. It is so correct that you just have to be there long enough for it to happen. And unfortunately, some people aren't.
But, like you said, you keep walking the path, you made it back, and here you are today.
Yes, sir.
You kind of mentioned that this when you were talking about your son, and Master Hutchinson mentioned this. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but he mentioned that at that time between Edon and Samdan that you beat cancer in that time of your life.
I did. Yeah, I did. And I don't mind talking about it. So when I was 50, I did what everybody should do. Go get your, and this, I'll even be a poster boy for that. Go get your screening colonoscopy. Because I did. I had no symptoms. I ended up having colon cancer. It was very early, and I had a colon resection, and that sort of paused me a bit. And then when I finished colon cancer, everything was great. I was 5 years out. I was clean bill of health. I ended up having prostate cancer. Again, very early stage. And so I had radiation therapy for that. And I have to tell you, throughout both of those episodes, which were, as everybody will tell you who's had cancer or watched somebody go through cancer, life-changing. Life-changing when you get the diagnosis, life-changing that every time you have a pain, you go, ooh, is that again? You know, it's just, but you know, the training, the mental toughness, the drive, the visualization that we have and the training we get with Tungsto helped me persevere through that. And, you know, I mean, I teach, hope people think I teach like, I don't know how long I can teach, but I'll continue to teach. And both my cancers are remitted. I mean, I'm good. I'm screened all the time, and everything is good. But I was a very fortunate person because I didn't have to go through a lot of what some of my friends who've had cancer had. I mean, I had surgery, I had colon resection, I had a lot of radiation, but I didn't have to take chemotherapy. I didn't have to do some of that stuff. So, but you know, the whole time, you know, I think my mental karate training was there, and to get up and to, you know, do the physical stuff again to the degree that you can is also great. So yeah, it was you know, it was important for me to be where I was and to get back to training and to know that was a goal, not only of beating cancer, to be there for my family and my friends, but also to be able to continue to pass on the art. So yeah, so.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
And it's like basically the same thing you said as far as work goes. It's that mental, the mental preparedness, the mental toughness. Just my wife and always say, tomorrow's not promised. So, you know, live your life to the fullest. You know, even right now, things aren't great in the world, but you get up, put your dobok on, you know, or you just do stuff at home, whatever it is. If you got to put your dobok on in the basement,
right, whatever, exactly right.
Do it.
You're right. I mean, and even now, right? So if you, what martial arts training has always been for me, and this has been when I was in my younger days, you know, especially when I guess it was when I restarted in '96 when I was in Tung Sudo training. You know, I would work in an environment that I had an hour drive to where I was going, an hour drive coming back. It was Atlanta traffic. It wasn't fun. And my work day was pretty intense and sometimes, you know, a little depressing, right? Because I was working in the clinical realm. So I was working with sick people and I was sometimes doing research and things like that. But what happened with me with martial arts is when I got to the dojang, and the old thing about, you know, putting your shoes outside and leaving your shoes at the door, I really took that to heart, and it was empowering. It was that respite of going in and training hard for an hour or 2 hours or however long the classes were, and then teaching. It was a switch I could turn off of everything that was out there. I could train, I could do what I needed to do in the martial arts. And then and the stuff was still there when I got back. Again, that's another lesson we try to teach our students, right? Look, when you come in here, leave all that stuff outside, take your 45 minutes or an hour, do your training, commit to it 100%. Guaranteed when you get done, it's still going to be there. You know, your stuff is still there, but you might be in a better frame of mind to manage that than you were than when you came in. And that clearly was sort of the addiction that I got that got me going, right? It was like, okay, no matter what's going on, I'm going to train, I'm going to punch targets, I'm going to spar, whatever the issue was that day, or going in and passing on the art to some junior students when I was an instructor. I was able to do that. And I still can to this day. And we were interviewing my wife. She would say, sometimes he's grumpy, but she's a different guy when he gets to that dojang. So, you know, it's still there, you know, and it's a recharge thing. It's like plugging the batteries in or something for me anyway. I think a lot of students in masters for sure.
Absolutely. And I echo what you just said. I say it all the time. It's like, look, you're here for 45 minutes. So put everything you can into 45 minutes, and then you go off, go watch TV, go play Fortnite or whatever it is you want to go do. But right now you're here. So, let's do this.
Absolutely.
I want to backtrack a little bit. One of the things that Mr. Ormison shared with me was when you tested for Chodan, you got to test in front of Grandmaster Shin. And he also shared that you got the opportunity to do some security work with Grandmaster Shin.
Yes, I did. Yes. Both things were very impactful. So when I tested for Chodan, probably 1999, something like that, maybe. Grandmaster Shin was there, and you've been there. Everybody's wearing a black belt. You leave it all on the floor, and you do your thing. You're out there. You're exhausted. Your knuckles are bleeding. Whatever's going on from your breaking. So we sit down, and Grandmaster addresses the group. First thing he says is, "You Chodans," he says, "you think you know Tung Sado? You know 10% Tung Sado." I looked there. I said, "What? This is everything I know." I mean, I went 100. And you know what? So correct. But it impacted me like, okay, was I that bad that I didn't do what I was supposed to do right? And you maybe heard the same speech, but I mean, and he goes on to say the Edons know 20%, the Samdons know, and it's so true. It's so true that is just such a little beginning on what's there. I mean, and that's what I love about Masters Camp. I feel like I don't know what's going on when I go there with all the talent and all the stuff we're being instructed on. It's just like being a white belt again, and just trying to learn things. And everybody is so great at passing that on. But so that was that. I know I sort of went ahead a little bit, but rambled. I apologize. But
you're good.
So that was, I tested in front of him for my first degree and my second degree, and not the third degree. He was not there during my third degree test. But yeah, I mean, he always had a lot of great stuff to say, and always again, so approachable. And then so when I moved to Florida, the region broke up, and they created Region 21, I think right before that. And Grandmaster Shin was the original region director, and then Master Brian Califf was the first region director. And so and I was in and out. I was not training consistently at any one place. I would help out where I could. I'd go over to the dojang. I would train a little bit, but I was doing helping these guys, the two individuals starting schools, to really get the school going. And so Master Caleb called me. He goes, "Grandmaster Shin's coming, and I want you to be on a security detail." I said, "Okay, what do I need to do?" He goes, "Call headquarters." So Maggie had sent a letter out to everybody on what you're supposed to do. And so I had the great pleasure, I was scared to death, of going and picking Grandmaster Shin up and driving him. And I was assigned to stay at the hotel in a room next to him. And, we had lots of conversations in the car. First I said nothing. I was just like, okay, I guess I just drive. And he starts asking me questions like he always does. Asked me about myself. And then I had met him years before. And I said to him, "Sir," I said, "how do you know everybody's name?" I said, "Everybody you see, you call them by their name." And he starts laughing. And he says, "I write on your dobak?" I said, "Yes, sir. I write your name on your dobak in Korean." I said, "Oh." He goes, "I don't know anybody's name." He says, "I just read the Korean writing." and just the way he said it, knowing him, like you sort of can see his mannerisms and doing that. I was like, oh, okay, so that's his sort of secret, right? So when I drove him to his hotel, and I was actually security, I think 2 times or maybe 3 times. One time I drove him to his hotel, and I was staying next to him, and I said to him, "Sir, when would you like to get up in the morning?" And he says, "Oh, get me up at 7 o'clock. When's the event?" I said, "We have to be there at 8 o'clock. Get me up at 7 o'clock. Okay, sir." So I go to bed, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm not a trained security guy, but I'm looking out, making sure there's nobody around. And it wasn't an area of our town that I wouldn't say is bad, but it's an area I'd pay attention to make sure there's no riffraff around or something. And so I got up early, and I go over and I knocked on his door. He's not there. I'm like, oh my God, I blew it. And he comes walking back, in a pair of sweatpants and a Kikong t-shirt, or a blue t-shirt at the time. I said, "Sir," he goes, "Oh, don't worry. I found a nice place out there. I walked all the way down here." I'm like, oh my God, and I figured that's it. I'm getting fired or something. Then I found out he does that all the time. he would sneak off and go do Qigong or something and then come back. And we had a great time. And then I'll tell you one other story, which was, again, I always learn through my hard knocks, right? So I'm in security at a studio, and I'm standing there and he's sitting in a chair signing autographs. And, kids are coming up and I'm making sure they're going in there, everything one kid at a time. And this lady walks up and she says, can I have Grandmaster Shin sign something? I said, sure. So she goes over there and she hands him something. And, he looks at whatever she handed him and laughs. And then they talk, and then she leaves with this big grin. And he calls me over and I go, uh-oh, I already did something wrong again. He goes, you know what she showed me? I said, no. He holds up this picture of a lady in a bikini. And he goes, she gave me this bikini picture, wanted me to sign it. And he starts laughing, and I'm like, oh my God. So that was it. So everybody that came by, I'm like, let me see your handbag. What do you got over here? But his sense of humor, he just laughed about it, but it was great. And and then the only other story is I went to dinner with him. It was hosted at the house of Greg Phillips, whose wife is Korean, and his wife's Korean parents were in town. So they all had Grandmaster Shin over there, and I was at security. So I walked up to the door and I said, sir, what time do I need to come and get you? He goes, no, you're coming in. I said, all right. And it was all Korean food. I don't know anything about Korean food. So they had a lot of fun with me, asking me to taste certain things. And there's one, I don't even know what it was. He says, somebody said, Vic, taste this. I said, okay, sure. And so he pokes me, he goes, it's very hot. And I don't know what it was, but I didn't taste a lot of it, but it was pretty hot. But being around him was just so incredible on, again, just the way he was with people and how much he cared about you. He always asked me about, how's my son doing? How's my daughter doing? Who are both students? How's my wife doing? When's my wife going to become a student? And this kind of thing. So he was just, just an incredible guy, and was very, very, very fortunate and honored to spend some time with him one-on-one. That's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, it's awesome. And what's even better is that anyone who had conversations, interactions with him has those stories where he would always, and Grandmaster Bowen was similar, where he'd ask about your family and he would remember things about your family or little things, and those things made him really special to a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. My limited conversation with Grandmaster Bowden, was almost like a copy of Grandmaster Shin, right, in the way he approached people and the love he showed and the caring and the kindness, much too soon to lose him, but he was the perfect person to step into that rank.
Outside of the security, have you had the opportunity to serve the region in any other capacity?
In the region, I've hosted a number of events. Obviously sit on the Don panels and some of the other things. We host an event usually in my area of town every other year. We actually had one scheduled for October 23rd this year, and we are not going to have it due to the issues with COVID. But we try to do, our event is sort of like an outdoor kind of thing. And one of the things that Master Hutchinson kept pushing for something really unique. So the last time we did it, I hired a boat and we took all of the senior instructors, third dans and masters, and Master Noshida was there. Master Purnell was there, out to this sandbar out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And we trained out there. And so, it was fun. We had similar plans for this year, but we're going to look at it in a couple of years and just do some other stuff this year. But so I help out any way I can. With the association, I'm on the strategic planning committee and other things that they ask me to do. So, we have a great region. We are serious enough serious to have great training, great martial arts, but we also have a little bit of fun, like I know a lot of the regions do. So I'm very fortunate to be part of this region.
And when I spoke to Master Hutchinson, that's exactly what he said. He's like, we train hard, but when we're done, we like to have fun and we enjoy ourselves. And we're the same way in Region 8.
Oh, yeah. The black belt camps were always great. When we were combined, with, before they broke up the region, we had some great black belt camps. So we were rappelling down rocks and doing stuff like that. And now our black belt camps are a little more sedate, but we do some neat stuff there. And, we're all hopefully get back to that format, hopefully within a year, and get to do some things. We always have incredible instructors that come in and, great learnings and opportunity to teach at that level for a large number of students for people like me and the other masters, I think is great. Where now I have Chodanbos, first, second degree, third degree black belts that are in the, your training instead of sort of the other ranks in large numbers. That's always fun to amp up the training and put a little more philosophy and a little more technique in there. So that's great.
Awesome. So let's talk about Suncoast TSD.
Yes, sir.
Tell us, when did you officially take over, and just tell us about training, teaching.
Sure. Yeah, so I was, helping out at the studio, which was formed in the late 2007 or 8, something like that. And then the family that was running it had decided they didn't want to run the studio anymore. And so they approached me to see if I was interested in taking over the studio. At the time, I was still working in the corporate world and I was traveling a lot. And I said, I just can't be there all the time. I can't be the guy to do that. But there was another student who was interested in doing that. And so I approached him and we formed a partnership. And in 2013, bought Suncoast TSD as a partnership. I was a chief instructor and he really was sort of like the operations guy. He taught, was an instructor, but he could be there every day because he had a local job, and I could be there, as much as I could, but many times I would be traveling. I would always get there once a week, but sometimes not consistent enough. And then in the fall of 2017, my business partner had said that, he sort of wants to move on. He was going to get a different job and not be in the same location. So I bought him out. So since 2017, I've been the sole owner and still the chief instructor. So, we try to train hard. We offer obviously Tiny Tiger classes and then youth classes. We're not a large studio. My philosophy is I'm doing this the reason I have the studio is to pass on the art. And as we are commercial in the sense that we have to pay rent and have a storefront and all of that. But my personal objective isn't to have 150 students and that kind of thing. We have about 60 students that train. We've been as low as 40 and as high as 75. And so right now we're probably 55 or 60. The COVID pandemic has impacted a bit, but we're still able to pay our bills. We train hard, and I have a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instructors with myself that they all are guys that work. One younger guy is in school, but they give me the time they can, and they take over some of the classes. And I have one young lady now who's in training who just turned 18 to be. She's one of my Joe Qs that's now going to train up to be a certified instructor. So she's in our training program for that. But no, it's great. And I think we have some great students. We have students who have, personal challenges and come in and, we hope to do some good with those things. But we're doing good. It's fun. It's passing on the art. It's great.
Earlier you talked about Grandmaster Shin asking if when your wife was going to start training. She's training now, right?
She is. Yep. I think she decided that if she ever wanted to see me, she needed to come in and do karate. So she does. Actually, a couple of pictures here. So here's an old one, a young me with Grandmaster Shin. I have this hung up in my office. I cherish this because it's one of those pictures. This one, even a little bit more. So it is the same man. I guess the lighting is different. I have a great tan. Those are my 2 kids when they started way back. They're both 30 and 28 now. And then this is a more current picture of us, more recent, after probably 2017 or 18, and my wife is training. She's now a Chodanbo. But she started late in life, so she's dealing with a lot of challenges, but her perseverance is incredible. She is a great athlete, and when I was doing all the karate, she was competing in triathlons and all that other stuff. And now she's a black belt candidate, and we're hopefully going to get her through. She's working at it. So now we all are training. It is part of what our family does. It's part of what we do. I have karate ornament balls on my Christmas tree, and all those mementos. So it's something that's not, it's part of us. And it's now part, I'm happy to say, part of every part of my family. So.
Yeah, there's nothing like it, having the whole family. And like you like you said with your wife, if she wants to see you, especially, you know, black belt camps and tournaments, she knows where you're going to be. So
yeah, and she always was the supporter, right? So
right.
tournament, she was always there and all those things. But it's, I think, the dojang time. It's like, okay, I'll see you. I'm leaving to go to the dojang. I'll be home at 9:30 or whenever I get back. And so now being part of that, you know, helps a lot. And also, she understands the other things other than the physical part of it now as well. Whereas before, it was the optics that you see as an outsider. You know, you see all the kicking and punching and tournaments and scoring points and all of that. And now it's okay, I get this. It's a little deeper than that. So that's great. And, you know, training with my family, probably for me personally, it was a great bonding experience for me and my daughter, because my daughter and my son did it at the same time in the early days. But when we moved to Florida, my daughter stayed attached to karate. She was a Chodan. She tested at 11 or 12, whatever the minimum age was in those days. When she tested for Chodan, I tested for Edan. So we were at the same test. That was a little nuts because, you know, I'm over there looking at her, and I probably made more mistakes in the test than I ever did. But worrying that she was going to get stuff. And I think we both messed up a staff form, because I vividly remember 2 Lampasonas being called out and having to do, you know, the second staff form again or something like that. So hopefully nobody videotaped that. But yeah, so we did that together and we bonded a lot. You know, I had that time in the car to talk about stuff. And then she sort of was going more involved in high school sports and sort of stepped away a bit. And then my son got back in. And so sort of one door closed, the other one opened, and he and I bonded tremendously. And he created some great friendships with, you know, a lot of the other guys his age in the association in the region. Mm-hmm. And they're good friends and they stay good friends. And he's off doing his thing now, but they still stay connected. So that was a great experience. So it really, as a dad, was really impactful to have that time with your child on something very different that not everybody's doing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, everybody's playing baseball, soccer, and football, but there aren't very many people doing what we do. And that was good to have that time together and that bonding. And I think I always, you know, I have a lot of my students have their children training, and it's great, the adults and the kids. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's always a great day when you get a parent to finally step on the mats, and then they get it. You know, they understand why you're there every night and why their kids are in it. And it's super special. So I understand that you retired from your day job last year.
How 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago I retired.
2 years ago, okay.
Yeah.
How are things? You got any new hobbies, or you just more time dedicated to Tung Sudo?
Well, you know, the retirement worked out well. It was good timing with when my business partner decided he wanted to sort of unplug. And so when he said he didn't want to do this anymore and he was going to move on to a different job, didn't want to train, but didn't want to, you know, be part of the studio and run all the studio stuff. I was sort of at the point where I was close to retirement. And then as things happen in the corporate world, you know, things get bought. So the division I was in got bought. They wanted me to run a bigger, broader job with the new company. I just said, no, I can't do that. And karate, and actually, again, martial arts had some impact in that. I was like, you know what are my other options? And so I retired with, you know, a retirement thing a little bit early, about a year earlier than I planned to. But then allowed me to dedicate some more time into the dojang. But, you know, I live in Florida, and I moved to Florida. I moved to the house I'm in now because I like the water. I like to be in a boat fishing. So I do a lot of that. I do as much as I can, you know, those kind of recreational activities. And then I spend a lot of time, you know, in the studio, more time than I ever would have before. When I was working in the corporate world, I mean, I just couldn't do it. I wasn't around physically.
Gotcha. I know you guys opened back up in May after being closed from COVID.
Yes.
How did your professional background affect the way you looked at reopening and keeping things safe for you and your students?
Yeah. So my professional background as a clinical pharmacologist was focused in multi-drug resistant bacteria the last 10 years. So I worked with companies that were developing novel anti-infectives, particularly antibacterial drugs that work for these multi-resistant organisms. But I have a strong background in infectious disease in general, because that's what I did a lot of over in the Emory days. And so that helped a lot in understanding. I never would claim to be anything like a virologist, but I understand the disease pretty well. And I also, the funny thing, when I was at Emory, it was right across the street from the CDC. So we'd go over to conferences over there all the time. And so I'm very familiar with the resources the CDC has. And so a lot of those are public. You just have to know where to find them. And so I used a lot of that, and it's all public now. Everybody's talking about CDC guidelines. So what I understand about, the transmission of the virus, what's being found about the transmission of the virus, and designed, I think, the safest possible way to open. And it really follows what the CDC guidelines are, which is, increased disinfection on all high contact things, increase, sanitization of people's hands, and require the flow of people not to get to where you're going to create areas of interaction when it's not necessary. Social distance. We went through and marked the mats like everybody has probably done. We have actually not allowed parents, with some exceptions on the younger kids, in the studio. They're marked with spaces for them to stay outside. We have glass windows in the front so they could see the students that way. But this is the thing about Zoom that was great, is they can get on their phone and watch the class on Zoom. Because the class is broadcast, every class, even the live ones, on Zoom. So they could sit in the car and do that. And when we did a test, that's what they did. A lot of them just brought their iPads and went and watched the test on Zoom. And we didn't have really anybody in the testing floor but the 10 students we had testing. We had to break the classes into, I had to put a limit on the classes. I used this membership database called Zen Planner, and they were very proactive on making it easy to do a lot of this stuff. They are able, you can set up parallel classes for Zoom and live. You could put a cap on the number of students in the class. I'm sure a lot of these other databases do that, but they were very proactive in doing that. It worked a lot with me to get that done as part of being a member and, paying my monthly fees to them. So I did everything I could with that. And then our mask guidelines were limited in the beginning, and then our county put a mandatory mask guideline in. So now everybody coming in is wearing a mask. And that was the one thing we weren't 100% compliant with CDC, was the mask. We kept people 6 feet apart, but we weren't wearing a lot of masks. Now everybody's got masks on till they're social distanced and training. They can wear them if they want. About half do, half don't. I usually wear one because I'm a little older and sort of in one of the risk categories, I guess. And it seems to be working okay. Keeping the parents, doing what you want them to do sometimes, but they sort of respect that. And I have some students who don't want to come in because their parents or them are concerned, and I'm totally respectful of that. That's what we have to do. That's what we do. But so I set up, actually, like I was working back in a hospital, and I set up a set of policy guidelines, and I educated my instructors and staff on it, sent it to all of the students, parents, via a group email. I said, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're doing it. These are the steps we're taking. We have removed some things from the curriculum, unfortunately. The touching things, the Hapkido and the Hussein Sul are modified quite a bit. One steps are distance. If a student is using a target, they get one target assigned to them for the class, the entire class. Each student might have a hand target at the end. They go into a bucket, and then we sanitize the things in there, and they get hung up. We do the mats every day as opposed to probably every couple of days, but we used to do them. So we've done everything we can. I think the better thing I did was when we first had to stop doing live training, and the Zen people helped me with this a lot, we went immediately to, first thing I did was create online curriculum by rank. And then I videotaped 2 of my students and put them on a closed YouTube channel. And I said, here are all the techniques that we did were 1 step forward, 1 step back, 1 step right, considering spatial challenges people would have, or space challenges people would have in their homes. And I had some of my senior black belts demonstrate all the techniques, and I sent those out. And I said, do this on your own. Now, I think the uptake was probably pretty low, but some people did it. And then when we went to virtual, before we opened up, we did a virtual format, and we ran virtual classes, and instructors came in and did that. Then we also opened up free one-on-one training. So one-on-one coaching All the instructors gave time on a calendar. They could schedule it through the Zen platform, and students would take advantage of a one-on-one video coach with one of the instructors and work on whatever they wanted. It was limited at 15 minutes, but they usually went a little longer than that. And then I also made everybody's membership unlimited. So all the virtual training they wanted to do, regardless of their rank, they could jump into an advanced class, whatever they wanted to do. And I set it up so that the virtual classes counted towards their rank. So they could get the 24 classes they needed for the next rank by doing it all virtual. Not knowing at that time when we were going to actually test, but we have done one test and I have another test Friday we're doing with a small number of students. So those are the things we put into place proactively. And then, first the last stuff I spoke about, and then the protocol to keep people as safe as we can, with the ultimate respect on, if you're concerned, don't come in. Right. And of course, obviously, if you're sick, don't come in. If your brother's sick, your mother's sick. And knock on wood, good prayer. So far, everything's okay, as far as I know.
Excellent. Well, believe it or not, we're at an hour mark. So anything that you want to add before we finish up? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think, what I tried to do during the COVID thing is I did a weekly Facebook Live to our closed Suncoast community. So we had a Suncoast community Facebook page that's closed just for students and family. And what I tried to, instill every week was something positive. It might be a quote I found or something like that. And was trying, and they were only like 2 or 3 minute Facebook Live events, but I tried to tell everybody that this will pass, mm-hmm. that you can continue to train, continue to build your inner strength through Tung Soo Do training, continue to think about the life skills that we talk about and how that will help you persevere through this. And, I guess the only other thing I would say is, what I think the most valuable thing we have with our training is that, you can approach Tung Soo Do training when you get it as a life skill program that'll be with you your entire life. And in my master's essay, I compared traditional Tung Soo Do training against some of the self-help stuff that's out there, a lot of different self-help authors. And I paralleled the two and showed how, they really match up really well. So if you want something to motivate you to do all those good things people say, by continuing to train will get you there. And you'll also get the benefit of the physical training, which is obviously tremendous. The self-defense training, that's tremendous as well. So I think my only message to everybody watching is keep training. Even if you can't do everything physically, go out there and do what you can, because your brothers and sisters in the World Tung Soo Do Association want you to be out there, want you to do everything you can. They'll never judge your abilities. We will simply, except in a tournament, okay, we have to have that on the side. But,
right.
But if you keep on the path, you'll eventually get to where you're going. And while you're there, you'll learn some really great things about yourself. So keep up the good work.
Awesome, sir. Well, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it. I had a great time learning a little bit about you and your history. So thanks again for joining me.
Thank you so much, sir, for the time and doing all this. It's great. And you guys stay safe. And I can't wait to see everybody again, probably next March at our master's camp, but that'll be great. So thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Tung Soo.
Tung Soo.